on Continuum Leadership Resource, we're talking about one of the most mind-boggling, faith-stretching concepts in the Word of God, how husbands ought to love their wives. Well, I want to challenge you today, guys, with one of the greatest scriptural challenges and life challenges that we face, and that is really keeping our marriages strong and keeping that love between us and our wives alive and fresh. And when Paul talks about this relationship between husbands and wives in Ephesians, he says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for her. Now that's a pretty high level of love. And that's our example, and it says that he might sanctify and cleanse her with the washing of water by the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that she should be holy and without blemish. I mean, what's he talking about here? Is he talking about how the church compares to our marriage, or is he talking about how our marriages ought to compare to what he's doing in the church? As Jesus gave his life for the church, and as he really, does everything to purify and present it to himself. I love this word, present it to himself, a glorious church. And our responsibility, if we want to have a good marriage, is to present our wives to ourselves. In other words, that total selfless giving of ourselves to build our wives up, to make them fulfilled in what God has called them to do. That's our responsibility. And if we don't do that, we're going to have trouble. And a lot of times we can think, well, my wife won't do this, or my wife isn't this, or my wife isn't that. Some of us think, well, if I just had a different wife. No, it's our responsibility, guys. The buck stops here. Just as Christ is responsible for the church, you and I have the same level of responsibility for our marriage. So he said that we ought to love our wives even as we love our own bodies. And he who loves his wife loves himself. I mean, there's a benefit that comes back to us here when we love our wives. You think about it. I'm a pretty tough guy. You're probably a real tough guy. You're pretty macho, right? But when we, bump our shin or something, man, all of our focus goes to that one little sore spot. And that's the way we need to be with our wives. If there's anything that they need, we need to turn all of our focus to them so that we can present them to ourselves, as this wonderful, beautiful bride. And we're not talking about the fleshly, the natural things. And I think this is the issue, especially as we get older in the ministry. We've got to understand this is not a Hollywood romance anymore. You might be, what's the guy that fell in love with Sabrina on the Harrison Ford. Yeah, he's 80 years old and the young chicks are still falling in love with him, but that's only in Hollywood. That doesn't happen in real life. In fact, in Genesis, look at this. In chapter 6, it says, now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and then God brings the whole Noah and the flood and all that kind of stuff. He destroys the mankind off the earth. It says when they saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves, all of whom they chose, and the Lord said, my spirit will not strive with man forever. The reason that God cleansed the earth was because men started choosing women to be their wives according to their fleshly, natural desires. See, God is pretty strict about this. This is not what our love is built on. Our love is built on the mutual calling and vision and purpose that God has put in our lives. It's powerful when we can come together with a good wife and have this kind of a relationship, because together we can do so much more than we could do as individuals. And I credit in fact, the entire success of this ministry to the relationship that I have with my wife.
Ministry demands never diminish. Carrying the responsibility of our leadership is a heavy burden to bear. Our joy and passion easily become lost in the conflicts and challenges of ministry. Ministry never stops, it doesn't take a holiday, and it doesn't notice or care about the unfair demands it places on our lives and marriages. Marriage is the God-given foundation of life and ministry, offering strength, stability, and fulfillment. So while you're working hard to spark the flame of good works, church growth, and passion for Jesus, what are you doing to keep the flame of love alive in your marriage? Keeping love alive isn't just another chore on your to-do list. God created marriage for fulfillment. and the joys and growth found in marriage are for your benefit. If your marriage feels like a burden, it's time to rekindle the love. Develop a sense of humor. Most of us are far too serious when it comes to our marriage relationships. It's probably because you're a serious leader, doing serious things, for a very serious purpose. But have you given up your sense of humor? Delight and fun is a part of life, and there's fun to be had in marriage. Relax, kick back, and learn to laugh at yourself. Be creative. Romance isn't defined by roses, candlelight, and expensive things. Romance is passion, adoration, affection, and devotion to someone. So find ways to show your passion and affection. If you're really creative, you can even do this for free. Romance can be found in a walk, a picnic, a foot massage at the end of the day. Your creative ideas can make opportunities for romance unlimited. Hollywood sees you and your princess riding your white steed off into the sunset. But in the real world, we display our romance to our family and friends. So hang out with other couples and provoke each other to love and good times. Leave the ministry and work behind and cultivate other interests. Men want to be the hero, and their feelings get hurt far more easily than many women realize. Your willingness, relaxed attitude, and words of appreciation for your husband will make him feel like he's the luckiest man alive. Be a good sport. Be thankful for his efforts to romance you. Don't expect a storybook romance, and don't compare his efforts with others. Enjoy the creativity and the effort he's put into making you feel special, and express your appreciation. Ministry anxiety comes to rob you of romance and fun. Treat ministry stress as an enemy and turn your passion toward your God-ordained marriage and relationships. This will protect you against infidelity. Men, be spontaneous. Scheduled date nights can end up feeling like a chore, but spontaneity will produce thrill and excitement for the unexpected. Your role is more than just planning a romantic date. Some men have great plans, but give their wife the job of booking the restaurant or packaging the picnic. Romance for her is when she doesn't have to do the preparation before and the cleanup afterwards. Leaders, teach your kids and staff to create a home and ministry environment where romance and fun can flourish.
We see guys coming up with all kinds of ways to try and increase and boost that love relationship they have with their wives. You know, okay, we're going to have a date every Friday, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But you know what? It's a heart issue. Guys, we need to look at our hearts and say, how much do I love my wife and what do I want to do for her right now that will encourage her and pick her up? You know, it's not the ideal date that's going to make your marriage a success. It's the way you treat her on a moment-by-moment basis, the way that you really love your wife. The way to express our love and our hope, you know, our concern for any person is to cast vision and to help them in that vision. The same goes true for our wives or for anyone else we lead in the ministry. And guys, we need to cast vision so that our wives can feel like they're part of the ministry. But we also need to encourage all the men in our teams, in our ministries, guys, to love your wives. Let's get our wives on board with what God has called us to do. And we'll see the power, not only, you know, of just the peace and the niceness of the ministry, but also we see the power of that faith agreement as couples come together in total, absolute. We are going to serve God and see His kingdom come in our nation and in our ministry.